This question comes from Foster Taylor. At the 2010 Berkshire annual meeting, you said the one question that you would ask of the Berkshire CEO would be about the distribution of cash to shareholders as the Berkshire cash pile grows larger and larger. So let me ask that question. Do you still feel confident of the future prospects for our over $100 billion in cash on hand, or are we getting closer to cash distributions?
Well, the one thing, if Berkshire shares are selling for less than we think they're worth, that could be a pretty big way to distribute cash. But what we'd really like to do is buy great businesses. If we could buy a company for $50 billion or $75 billion, $100 billion, we could do it. And we can do it, and our word's good. It's difficult with a public company because, in effect, if you bid on a company, you make the bid, and their shareholders vote months later, and you're giving an option. If we're good for it, and the other guy has a way to top you, or all kinds of things, they can get out of it, and you get paid 2% for that or 1% for that. That is not an appropriate price. And on the other hand, Delaware will decide whether they should do it or not. And that's the way the world is. I mean, that's the law. So it'd be easier to do with a private company, and there aren't very many that are big. On the other hand, there's nobody else that can quite make a deal like we can under the right circumstances. And there could be a situation where a number of very decent companies have got a very uncomfortable borrowing structure, and money comes due to them at the exact wrong time, and that's when they pick up a phone, as did Tiffany and Harley Davidson and you name it. I mean, a whole bunch of companies in 2008. That sort of thing will happen again, whether it results in us getting the calls or what the world is exactly at that time. But the one thing we know is that the number of phone calls that you can make at a time like that is very, very limited. And there can be good companies. They don't want to sell the company necessarily, but they just may need $5 or $10 or $20 billion, depending on what company you're talking about. And that can happen, and our own shareholders can be selling the stock too cheap, and we'll never do anything to make them sell it cheap, and we'll tell them the truth about what the business is. But if market circumstances result in us being able to buy in $50 billion of our own stock, we'll buy it. So we'll see what the world holds. But we don't have the opportunities we used to have, but we've got enough, and we're making money with the things we have. It isn't killing us to hold 130 billion of bills at 5% plus bond equivalent yields, and everybody says, well, yields are going to go down in the future. I don't have the faintest idea what yields are going to do in the future. And the prime rate was 21.5% in 1981 or 2, and people were worried that it was going to go totally spin out of control. And Volcker kept it from happening. But if Volcker hadn't been in there, who the hell knows what would have happened? So we're running Berkshire so that we'll do okay, and maybe we'll do a little bit better than okay. Charlie?
Okay, maybe fine.
Okay, station 8.
Hello, Mr. Buffett and Mr. Munger. My name is Carlos Sanchez, and I'm honored to be here from Guadalajara, Mexico. Mr. Munger, as a fellow lawyer, I have a question regarding corporate law. Considering your experience and success, if you were to offer guidance to someone like Ralph Tortorella when he was at the beginning of his career and before becoming Berkshire Hathaway Company's lawyer, what key principles or lessons would you suggest to help him excel in his profession?
Well, I'm not sure I quite caught all of that. But
yeah,
I don't think I have a lot of advice about how to succeed as a lawyer. I have a son-in-law who describes modern law practice in a big firm. He says, it's like a pie eating contest where if you win, you get to eat more pie. And I advise you to avoid that kind of a law firm. Life is too short to just do nothing but eat pie.
Yeah. Yeah, Charlie has not practiced law since, what, 1964 maybe, or whatever it was, but
1962.
62. And Charlie has given me 4 or 5 pieces of advice that don't really come from his legal background, but because he knows the system so well and really did do quite well at Harvard Law School despite his taunting of teachers and a few things. He has given me 4 or 5 solutions on things that nobody else in the world would have given me, law firm or otherwise. And it's been within almost a nanosecond of when I described a problem to him, and he just gave me the answer that nobody else would have come up with. And I told you one of them last year, so I won't repeat it at this meeting. But we've got the best lawyer in the world, and Charlie, if it's something that really matters. There have been times when I've taken advantage of that. And Charlie didn't want to be a lawyer. He didn't want to sell his time, maybe at $20 an hour or something, to people he thought were making the wrong decisions, and he knew more about it than they did. And that just did not strike him as a good way to go through life, and I think he's probably right on that. I think he'd have really gotten to be miserable if he had to keep doing that. It's just no fun. It'd be like me giving investment advice to somebody or taking it from somebody. I just wouldn't want to do it in life. And Charlie figured that out, and so we decided to work for ourselves, and this work's been happily ever after.
We have no complaints.
Yeah, none. Okay, we're at Becky.
This question comes from Ryan Harding, and it's about the new 15% corporate minimum tax rate. As he sees it, its implementation is currently understood. He thinks it, as he understands it, to apply over rolling 3-year periods and to be based on reported earnings. First, does the inclusion of unrealized gains and losses in reported earnings under the current financial reporting standards contribute to the calculation for corporate minimum tax rate purposes? And could it potentially convert some of those notional deferred taxes into cash taxes, even if a rise in the market price of a major holding is only temporary, but rather extreme? And then second, could it reduce the effect of some of the renewable energy tax incentives and others?
Yeah. I think the answer on the second part probably is no, but I don't want to say it is for sure, because he's asking the same questions I ask of Mark Hamburg, who's the smartest guy on combining understanding of business, understanding the tax code, understanding SEC rules and everything else that you'll find in corporate America. And these questions, the particular question on marketable securities, I don't think has been answered yet. And I think that there are a number of things about the new Tax Act that were not enacted. But I would say this. We have said ourselves what we think the proper approach to operating income. We didn't design that because this tax law came along some years back. So we would think that you wouldn't include capital gains, unrealized capital gains, but we've got enough I think no matter how things turn out, the 15% tax doesn't bother me in the least. And we can figure ways, once we know the rules, where we will pay the 15% tax. And, we were paying 52% taxes, federal income taxes, when I bought control in the partnership of Berkshire Hathaway. I mean, the tax rate come down dramatically. And the deferred tax that was embodied, for example, at Sanborn Map, when I was involved in a system that was allowed under the tax law to avoid that tax. But that was a huge tax, 52%. So we will live with this tax code, and we do not think corporations are overtaxed in the United States. And and I think that the conversation about how we lose out to the world and all that sort of thing is really nonsense. But we've got a new law that hasn't yet, the regulations haven't been written on. And when we know what the game is, we will absolutely figure out a way to pay 15% every year, and which generally we've been paying anyway. And as I pointed out, if there were 1,000 corporations in the United States that paid what Berkshire has been paying, nobody else in the United States, no individual, no corporation would ever pay any income tax, Social Security tax, gift tax, estate tax, anything else. 1,000 like Berkshire Hathaway would produce the revenue that's being produced by the federal government, that's being derived under the present tax code from everybody in the United States. And I don't feel badly about that, and I'd love to get it to what it's 1/500th or something of the sort. But I'd like to do it if we can do it at this rate. I'm happy to do it. I think we are privileged to live in the United States, but we also have to control spending. And that's something that Congress doesn't quite like to do. And they didn't like to do it when my dad went to Congress, but they've dug in more as the years have gone by. Charlie?
Well, we covered this subject earlier.
Yeah. Okay. Station 9. Am I right on this? Yeah.
My name is Avalon Gross, and I am from Los Angeles, California. I am a shareholder, and it's my 4th year coming to the Woodstock of capitalism.
Yeah. We're glad you came.
Thank you so much for everything, Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger. What is the funniest story that you have never told about each other? And also, what is the hardest part of your business?
I'll answer the second. The second part of your question is that we don't have a hard business. We love our business. Every morning when I get up, I feel good. I don't know what's going to happen that day. Maybe nothing will happen, but maybe something will happen. And if nothing else, I'll roll some T-bills or something. But I work with the greatest group of people you can imagine. I mean, we like each other, and nobody is after anybody else's job or anything of the sort. It's ideal working conditions, and it's 5 minutes from my home or thereabouts. So I haven't spent my life commuting. I just can't imagine having anything better. And Charlie's got a lot of funny stories you haven't heard, but we'll see which one he comes up with.
Well, I think Warren and I are naturally so ridiculous that we don't need very many funny stories. We each do things that are peculiar enough so that we can keep one another amused.
Tell him what you told the lawyer when we were buying Hochschild Kohn.
I don't remember. You tell him.
Well, you remember? It was 1966, and we were down in Baltimore buying a department store, and we needed a lawyer. And we needed a lawyer who was nearby and would do exactly as told. And Charlie came up with a very good lawyer from Wilmer Cutler's, I believe. And I don't know whether Charlie remembers the instructions he gave the lawyer or not.
No, I don't.
Oh, well, Charlie told the lawyer, who we'd never met before, and he said, well, he says, treat Warren like, I was 36 at the time, or 35. He said, treat Warren like any other 90-year-old client. This guy knew exactly what he meant. And we made the deal in a hurry, and then we went to the bank, First National Bank, and I believe it was or Maryland National Bank, actually. And there was a fellow named Cammy Slack there, wasn't it, Charlie? And we wanted to borrow $6 million against a $12 million purchase. And Cammy looked at us with bewilderment. And he says, you want to borrow $6 million against a little old Hochul coon? And Charlie and I said something to the effect, well, the Maryland National was our first call, and if they didn't want to do it, we had another bank we'd go to. And anyway, they let us the money. But when he said little old Hochul coon, we immediately started thinking, maybe this isn't the best deal we've ever seen in our lives. And from that point on, we were trying to figure out how to sell it. So we had as much fun. Sandy Gottesman was involved with us then too, and we had as much fun out of deals that didn't work in a certain sense as the ones that did work. I mean, if you knew you were going to play golf and you were going to hit a hole-in-one on every hole, you just hit the ball and then when the hole is 300 yards away or 400 yards away, nobody would play golf. I mean, part of the fun of the game is the fact that you hit them into the woods, and sometimes you get them out, and sometimes you don't. So we are in the perfect sort of game, and we both enjoy it, and we have a lot of fun together, and we don't have to do anything we don't really believe in doing. I mean, we are not dictated to by any group, and so we get to follow our own. We get to forge our own destiny, and in a sense, forge the own principles by which we can run the company, and that's a huge luxury in life. And we don't want to be president of any other company in the world or CEO or anything else where we have to conform to certain things that we really don't want to conform to. Is that a fair description, Charlie?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Okay, Becky.
This question comes from David Cass, who is a professor at the Business School at University of Maryland. He says, at last year's annual meeting, Warren mentioned that Berkshire had taken a large stake in Activision Blizzard as a merger arbitrage play. Since the UK regulator has blocked its acquisition by Microsoft, has Berkshire reduced or sold its stake?
Well, I think in terms of what we do with stocks, we don't give information except when required to, which is in the 13F or whatever we file. And there's certain things you can actually figure out by looking at our 10Q, which we filed this morning, but you have to look pretty hard. But I would say this: I think Microsoft has been remarkably what's the word? Willing to cooperate with governing bodies, and I mean, they want to do the deal, and they met the opposition, it seems to me, more than halfway. But that doesn't mean that it gets done if a given country, in this case the UK, wants to block it. They're in a better position to block it than the United States. But just the way the world works, and that doesn't get solved by offering more money, or so it. I don't know how it turns out, But if it doesn't go through, I don't think it's through any shortcoming by either Microsoft or Activision. But not everything that should happen does happen. And well, we ran into it when we bought, made the deal with Dominion Energy 18 months ago, and they let us buy a good bit of what we wanted to buy, and then the U.S. government, in effect, said, you can't buy something else, which I think we would have done a better job with than anybody else did, and which the states involved did not object to it, which the customers didn't object to it. But you don't take on the United States government, and you try and figure out things that you won't have a problem with. And I think in that case, the U.S. government made a mistake. I think the British government's making a mistake in this case, but that's life in the big cities, sure, I would say. And what we do will depend on a lot of things. Charlie?
Well, I think what we do, you kissed that one off beautifully.
Okay, station 10.